What treatment? I never thought Lopez was the traitor. There's no time. I have to find Pachamama.
And so, as Independence Day draws ever closer for Maruza, and its democratic future hangs in the balance, we find ourselves double-crossed, locked away in this cell, and separated from our party. And to make matters worse, even if we were able to get out of the cell, there is a guard right outside on patrol, so we'd have to contend with him. Still, we do need to regroup with everybody and get back on track with stopping the Civil War, so let's see what we can salvage inside the cell here. The first thing we see is this pretty large toilet here. But it is all out of agua, and it's not going to be much use to us getting to Independence Square. Likewise, the most obvious other feature of the cell here is the bed, but it's got nothing useful for us as well. The only other thing of interest is over here in the corner, and it looks to be a climbable piece of wall. Little did they know that leaving us with our climbing gloves was a terrible mistake on their part. Sadly, the Maruzan military never considered the fact that Kato might very well indeed be the Japanese Spider-Man. But yeah, now that we were seemingly able to easily dispatch that soldier, we can now start exploring, and first things first, there are these nearby cells which, coincidentally, happen to have at least two of our missing party members. The problem is, as you might assume, we're not going to be able to easily get into the cells. Julia does mention that we could possibly use a tool to get inside, and I do feel like there is a nearby tool that we can maybe use to our advantage. In that case, the tool is Steve. He does mention that the electronic lock on the door probably has a key card that we can use. We just have to keep on the lookout for that, and we should be able to free both of them. Problem is, as you imagine, that this is a military base. It is going to be pretty heavily guarded. We do see a familiar face. Yeah, the treacherous Lopez now donning his military garb. No longer a question of whether or not he is a traitor. Pretty obvious. But yeah, there could very well be a key card where he just came from, but we do have to find out a way to get around that guard, and considering our options, yeah, the warehouse is the only other place for us to go. Now, there aren't really any items to get in here. Instead, the one focal point of the room is another climbable wall and a little air duct that we can climb inside of. That should allow us to get around that guard and continue exploring.
must be some sort of control room.
So we caught sight of a control room that definitely will be of use to us. But of more immediate usage to us is right here on the table. Because even though it's hard to make out, we do find Julia's knife and lighter. Now, obviously, Kato doesn't have the same bloodlust as Julia, so the knife won't be of much use to him, but we might be able to get some usage out of the lighter at least. Also of note in this room, at least along the back wall here, is something up above the boxes. Just having a little bit of trouble getting to it. Just really slippery here. There we go. But yeah, on the ceiling here, see something seems to be some type of sensor. Not sure what it might be a sensor for. Might be to sense these nearby boxes of Leon. But yeah, nothing else of real interest in the room, so we can hope we got around that guard and we can continue exploring. In fact, I think it's a nice little bit of an architectural layout choice, because you can actually see the vent where we crawled right above there. And that does mean that this should be that control room. But yeah, while there is an electronic lock, it doesn't seem like it will use the same key card that the cell doors will use, so we'll have to figure out some other means to get inside there. But still, it's a question right now finding that key card to open up the cells in the first place. But continuing our exploration further down this hall, we find another room that we can get into. And it's more or less a break room. It's even got a few little posters, I think, of kawaii waifus, I suppose. But more importantly than that, on the desk here, we do manage to recover Steve's toolkit. And in addition to that, there is a little bit of reading material on the desk too. Now, while you might think, hey, we don't have Pachamama here to help us read this, so that it'll be pretty useless to us. Kinda. I mean, some of it is in Spanish, but Kato does also observe that some of it is in English as well. And the English bits he is able to pick up on include something about an emergency bell, an operation check. They could be doing some kind of fire or disaster drills today, but that could be of some use to us. Something to keep in mind for the future. In addition to that, at the far end of the hall here is another door, and this is a very important door because it leads to the elevator for the floor. Problem is that there is no keyhole. There's not even an electronic lock to use a keycard on, so it seems like it's going to require some special finagling to open. Still, with that pretty much a dead end, that means we can now start to push and make our way back down the other end of the hallway here. And we do stumble across what appears to be a fire alarm? Yeah, it's a fire alarm that could very well be attached to a sensor somewhere nearby, and Kato seems to think it might be some place where they definitely don't want fires to be. Also, we've managed to make pretty much a full circuit of the floor. That's the guard we ran into earlier. And we are going to have to figure out some way to get him to move to get into that room where Lopez came out of. And it just so happens that by sheer process of elimination, and by happening to read that note, we now have an idea of what we need to do. Yeah. I'm assuming that these boxes of Leon are actually some form of explosive, and as you might assume, the explosive storeroom is definitely a place where they don't want fires to occur, so yeah, it's time to throw off the sensor.
Wee woo, 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 wee woo.
And that does thankfully get the guard out of our pathway. And as opposed to the alarm trick that we pulled back in the communication station, this one is not really on a timer or anything, so we don't necessarily have to be in a rush, but yeah, there's not really a reason to just lollygag about and not make our way directly over to that room where Lopez came out of. Because that does have a very, very important item for us. And Kato does mention an IC card. I had to look up what that is. It's apparently something of like a metro pass for Japanese people to get on, subways and things like that. Yeah, once we do pick that up, that does cause the fire alarm to turn off, and as Kato mentions, that does mean the guard is going to go back on his patrol. In the end, though, it does kind of work out for us because he goes from his stationary position and goes to patrolling this hallway here. So we can easily get back around him. Timing on his movement is pretty lenient. And now that we have the key card to the cells, we should be able to fully reunite with Julia and Steve. Thankfully, Steve only has the remaining wounds that we've left on him throughout the entire game, so he's mostly okay. He does mention that his items were taken away. And it's a good thing for us that we did manage to explore, because we just happened to find his missing toolkit. Will definitely be in our best interest to get him back in working engineering order. And likewise, we can now have a very nice reunion with Julia. A part of me wants to commend the game for not kind of shoehorning in any kind of weird romance subplot between Julia and Kato. It easily could have been, like with a lot of other games, that they could have made them like gradually fall in love, but no, they're all business. Julia just wants to know where Pachamama is, and sadly, she's not anywhere that we've seen on this current floor. And it's definitely a very high priority that we find her. The good thing is that, as Julia mentions, it could very well be that if this is the middle of the night, they probably don't have as many guards as normal around here. And Well, I think the only remaining guard on the floor is that one that's patrolling the hallway. Now that we have rearmed Julia, I don't think that guard will be that much of a problem. Also, while Kato could probably easily hang on to the lighter, he wants to go ahead and make sure and give it back to Julia, as it is her favorite lighter. And I do like the little touch that she did notice the very loud fire alarm that went off, and I guess kind of assumes that maybe that's what Kato used to get them out of their cells. But yeah, with everybody now fully reunited, it's time for people to start doing their normal jobs. In this case, Julia's going to get back to what she does best, and that is be a pure-blooded American CIA agent. Which is to say, backstabbing people when they least expect it.
Adios.
Even putting a little Latin American flair on the end. But yeah, with that guard out of the way now, we can safely have Steve go over to that control room door. And yeah, while we don't have a key card to get in here, we have the next best thing. And Steve is easily able to crack the electronic lock here on the door. Inside, we see what looks to be kind of a familiar setup to the communication station with its radar, but this panel actually has an entirely separate usage. It controls the surveillance cameras as well as the door locks, apparently throughout the entire building. In fact, the one thing that really draws Steve's attention is a button that will unlock the doors to the elevator hall. So let's go ahead and press it and unlock that door. Uh-oh. That's not going to be good. It seems they put in an extra security measure and they put a 5-second timer on the door. Still, that's easy enough to get around. We just have to go ahead and position Kato and Julia right by the door. And technically speaking, you can do this one person at a time, but I don't know. It's easier that if you've got the quickness, that you should probably try to get them both through the door in one go. I mean, the timing is a little bit tight, but it's fine. And we are going to leave Steve at the control panel. He'll be of more use there as Kato and Julia continue their exploration and see if they can't pin down where Pachamama is. Rather strangely, though, for some reason, just pressing the elevator door button won't allow them to both go through at the same time. It seems like it could have easily just been a cutscene, but yeah, they make you jump through this tiny hoop to get both of them inside the elevator. As far as I know, you can't just go on to the next area with only one of them. Question still remains, though. It looks like there are a number of floors in this facility, and the question remains, which floor is Pachamama on? realistically, as we are kind of running against the clock here, we can't explore every floor. Works out in our favor, though, that Steve did stay behind at the controls because he is able to find a layout of the entire base, and he is able to get what could possibly be the floor where Pachimam is being kept at, which is the 4th floor. And he is also going to be able to monitor any other guards that are on patrol throughout the building, so I think we should be in relatively good hands, I suppose. Still, while Steve did, try to say that we are in good hands and we should relax, we probably still need to be a little bit careful, and we probably still need to hurry. So we've got a lot of conflicting emotions going on here. At least for right now, though. Now that we have Julia back with us and she is armed, she's probably going to be the best person to scout around the area. And more or less on this floor, we're just going to have to do a hard target sweep of every room. And hopefully not get stuck in pitch black darkness. Now, we can kind of make out a few things in the darkness here. It looks like there's a desk with a lamp and, I don't know, a few other odds and ends along the wall. And I mean, we do have her lighter to kind of illuminate the way at least a little bit. And the problem is that the light from the lighter is just not enough. There is a good chance, though, that Steve might have some ideas, considering he does have a layout of the entire base, so if we switch back to him. Let's see. Nothing really else on the control panel here draws his attention. Could be something on the main screen that he's already looking at. And it seems he is able to figure out at least something with the controls for the cameras, and yeah, while it seems initially like there's just some static going on the monitors up top here, on the left-hand monitor, he actually does see something of interest. Yeah, he's able to look in the control room on the 4th floor, and it's there that he sees the light coming from Julia's lighter. He seems pretty proud that he's finally able to outdo something for the CIA, or outdo something that even the CIA can't do. Yeah, while he can control a lot of things from his control panel, I guess Julia, in her own little control room on the 4th floor there, is able to control some additional things for the floor. In this case, by taking a closer look at the panel itself, we can see that not only are there security cameras, but there seems to be something that's high voltage on this floor. Now, if you're wondering what is high voltage, if you played Metal Gear Solid, it might make a little bit of sense. But if you live in the real world, it probably doesn't make as much sense. But yeah, there are high voltage panels on the floor. And I don't know, honestly, if they use them in any prisons. It seems very unrealistic and dangerous, but yeah, on this particular floor, there are super dangerous electrified floors. So maybe we need to look out for a radio-controlled missile. Or we'll just have to have Julia stay by the controls and see if she can't do something with those. But for right now, we do have another little air duct that Kato can crawl up into.
Kato, can you hear me? The air duct leads here. If you use it carefully, they'll never spot you. Pachamama should be somewhere beyond there. I could never do it myself, though. I don't do small, dark places.
Yeah, just a strange little aside from Steve there. More or less, we want to get across the fact it's a very, very long air duct. Which means that we are going to end up circumventing quite a bit of this floor. Hopefully that means we didn't skip over where Pachamama is possibly being kept. And as we still don't have a really good idea of where she could be, it still means we're gonna have to keep checking every room we come across. As you can probably imagine, she is probably not going to be held in the data room. But there are a few other items of interest in here, first of which is a medkit down there on the lower shelf. But in addition to that, there is quite a bit of reading material in here. Yeah, it seems the military has kept a pretty thorough record of all the political prisoners they kept in here. And they really want to nail home the fact that, yes, this floor is more than likely where Pachamama is being kept. Now, the remaining bit of stuff that we want to read in here is on the far shelf. And it's more or less just a general reminder of the possibility that civil war might not be the best course of action to, upend the evil regime. I mean, violence kind of begets violence, and terrorism is still, terrorism. It seems as well that the country of Maruza has kind of had this never-ending cycle of violence going from civil war to independence to civil war to independence. And there is a very good chance that if they don't do an actual democratic election, that things are just going to go back to the pretty bleak ways they were from before. With all that out of the way, though, we do want to make sure and heal up Kato. I think this is technically the very last health kit that you are going to be able to find in the game. And there is a very specific reason that they do want you to try to heal up Kato to full health. Yeah, but in case you were wondering where those electrified floors might come into play, here they are. And, well, there's not a whole lot to this little puzzle here. You just really have to flip the switch and it'll turn off a section of the electrified floor. Yeah, it switches the current to another set of electrified panels just around the corner there. And the game is nice enough to give you a very good warning about the electrified floors because, as opposed to most other sources of damage in the game, these electrified floors, they are just a instant kill, so yeah, you do want to be very careful with your pointing and clicking. But believe it or not, we have almost gone a full circuit around this floor. Still no signs of Pachamama, though. Just have this one final room.
haces pasarlas morado, Pachamama. Por fin puedo hablar contigo sin obstáculos.
López, tu objetivo es matarme. Por Dios, ¿de qué quieres hablar?
Es verdad, las tropas del gobierno te quieren muerta. Pero ese no es mi objetivo.
¿Qué?
Mi objetivo es aniquilar a la guerrilla en las montañas.
López.
Bueno, ¿dónde está la base de operaciones?
No tengo ni idea.
No puedes hacerte el inocente siempre. Tú debes saber dónde están las bases. ¿Dónde están? ¡Dilo!
Stop! Lopez!
Kato, how did you get in here?
Lopez, let her go.
Shut up! Kato, you can't get away!
Now it's time for our first boss fight of the game. First thing you want to do is not run too far away from Lopez because he will just keep shooting you. Instead, we want to lure him to the electrified floor panels here. Quickly switch back to Julia and have deep fried Lopez.
Pachamama, are you alright?
I'm all right. And what about the others?
Don't worry, they are all okay.
Thank God.
No time to lose. Let's get to the Independence Memorial Square.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, well, I made that seem a bit easy. It's actually pretty difficult to get in that little safe area between Lopez pistol whipping you or Lopez shooting you. Because if you did not manage to heal up, you'll probably die in about 2 hits, and if you don't realize that you're going to be constantly shot at, you, well, are probably going to die in about 4 hits. It's pretty dangerous all around. It's a pretty steep difficulty curve considering what else we've had to deal with in the game. Still, though, we've managed to regroup with Pachamama. So now we just have to get out of the base and head back down to Independence Square. And likewise, there seems like a perfect time to rejoin with Steve, so I guess we could go back to that floor. There is a slight problem, though, and that's the fact that it seems that all the guards in the facility have now noticed that we have escaped. So the floor that we'd previously been on is now swarming with guards, and even the front entrance where we could escape is now entirely surrounded and cut off to us. So Steve is at least limiting the access for the guards to the elevators so they can't get up to us, but realistically speaking, we are kind of trapped. There is one shining ray of hope here. That's the fact that Steve does notice there is a helicopter on the roof, just ready to take off, and that could very well be a means for us to get away and actually make our way down to Independence Square. And even better than that, since all the guards decide to close off the entrance to us, that means that there should be no guards waiting for us on the roof. There still obviously is the question of how Steve is going to be able to get up to the roof himself. I mean, he is going to need to stay by the controls to make sure the guards don't make their way up into the elevators. He does try to reassure us that he might make his way up there, but I'm kind of smelling a little sacrifice to save everybody setup going on here. Yeah, we can only hope for the best as we try to make our escape.
What happened? Is it a power failure?
I don't think so. Someone must have killed the power.
Shit. What do we do?
That things can just never be that easy for our party. Yeah, somehow or another, even after being massively electrocuted, Lopez is still alive and still being a thorn in our side. So we are going to need to figure out a way out of this elevator. So first things first, we are going to want to check out the panel here on the elevator itself. It might have something useful. Obviously, though, you do need to check it first to notice, it's way too fucking dark to see anything. The other problem is that even with our meager bit of light, since this is a Latin American elevator, the emergency instructions are in Spanish. Ugh. I guess it does work out that Pachamama is now here, so we can ask her for a little bit of assistance in getting a translation for this. And yes, you do have to do this in pretty much this exact order, otherwise they'll just keep saying things like, Pachamama doesn't know what she's looking at here, or... Yeah, but with the emergency instructions, we are told that there is an escape hatch in the roof, and that is the only way to see this little panel here in the darkness. And even though it is pretty shadowy over here, the wall here is actually climbable. So yeah, it's not too terribly difficult to get out of the elevator. It's just if you are not able to figure out the exact line of events that they want you to do, it can be a little bit time consuming. But yeah, in this nearby, fire emergency kit, we do find a fire hose. And that should work out pretty well for a makeshift rope to get Pachamama and Julia out of the stuck elevator.
Grab the hose! We took too much time just to get up here. Steve might be waiting for us. Let's hurry.
Yeah.
But as time is running out for Maruza and we have finally made our way up to the roof, hopefully you will join me next time as we reach the exciting conclusion of Aconcagua.